Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another Mad Meta Magic, Kano Tryharding Modern. Probably Tryharding Modern. This was a 5-0 deck list. It's not... I'll put it under Mad Meta Magic. This was a Patreon deck request for the month of October. I know, check watch, it's November. My apologies. The end of October got really, really crazy for me. I was out of state, 16-hour drive there, 16-hour drive back to officiate a wedding. I had to plan a whole bunch of stuff in a week, and I have a new job now. I've gotten a new... Going to be working for a different company. Going to be making a little bit more money, and that's all good, but it took a lot of my time and stress and effort to get sorted out. If you're worried about the lack of Tron content, don't worry, Tron's up next. But Francis, I'm so sorry that I couldn't get to your deck request in the month of October. I really should have, but it kind of slipped my mind, like I said, with all the chaos. So this is a modern list by the pilot LJEX that 5-0'd with this humans list. This is a blue-white humans list. For those of you that don't know, humans is a deck that just plays a whole bunch of humans, gets a bunch of 1/1 counters, just becomes this giant aggro ball, and then wins the game. And it does so relatively quickly and consistently, starting off with like Champion of the Parish in the 1-drop slot, supporting it with Esper Sentinel. In this particular variant, Esper Sentinel can provide a little bit of additional taxing. I found that a lot of people in Modern are really scared of giving your opponent cards when they see this card hit the battlefield. In this deck, they might think that it's hammer time if they see this card, and they might play differently. I think that's a possibility. So those are our two creatures in the 1-drop slot. In the 2-drop slot, one of the cards that makes the deck work the most is Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. Being able to tax all non-creature spells in a deck that basically plays none is very powerful. It basically is a sphere of resistance for a lot of modern decks. It's very strong. It has a 2-power first striking body, so it's actually quite resilient in combat. It can get 1/1 counters added to it with other cards that we have here. Thalia's Lieutenant is a 2-mana 1/1 that grows just like Champion of the Parish grows, except it also adds a 1/1 counter to each other creature when it hits the battlefield. This card is very strong. We have Sanctifier en-Vec, because there was a lot of black and red colored stuff running around. It's excellent grave hate. It basically is unkillable versus a lot of the decks running Unholy Heat and Fatal Push. It's a very, very strong human. We have Phantasmal Image, so if we have a good human that hits the battlefield that isn't Thalia, we can clone it, get another copy of it, and basically we can have, just more copies of Thalia's Lieutenant. It's very strong. We have Meddling Mage. Now, Meddling Mage is very powerful, so you can, when it enters the battlefield, you can name a non-land card, and spells with the chosen name can't be cast. So if you know your opponent is holding, let's say, Lightning Bolt, and they're tapped out, you can Meddling Mage Lightning Bolt, or if your opponent happens to be one of the decks playing like Prismatic Ending as its only removal, you could name Prismatic Ending, although you probably wouldn't because this deck runs 4 in the main deck. So it's kind of a call there. You try and pick whatever their best removal is, or if they're running Wraths, if they're running Anger of the Gods, like that sort of thing. Without running black, or like the 5-color humans deck, one of the things that makes Meddling Mage the best is when you have Kitesail Freebooter, because you can Freebooter, you can look at their hand, you can take something, and then you can follow it up with a Meddling Mage to name their other spells. And that's one of the best lines that the regular humans deck has, versus any deck that is slower than Blistering Pace aggro. So I think Meddling Mage is probably going to be a little bit worse here. It's going to rely heavily on skill without being able to look at your opponent's hand. Now, sometimes I'm good at that, sometimes I'm not. It's kind of like, for the Tron players in the audience, it's very similar to like knowing what to name with Pithing Needle. It's basically knowing what to Nevermore. And those sort of overlap, but not always, in the Venn diagram. We've got Unsettled Mariner. Unsettled Mariner is basically another tax. Because if your opponent's going to use removal, if you've got a Thalia on board, and you have an Unsettled Mariner on board, that Lightning Bolt is now a, what is that, Moonsilver Slash or something like that? Or Moonrager Slash? 3 mana for 3 damage. It's not great. Unsettled Mariner also taxes things that target you directly, I believe. Is that correct? You or target permanent you control, yes. So, in that regard, it also protects you. It's a great creature to be able to Phantasmal Image, because if you Phantasmal Image it, then everything gets taxed by 2, and it's great. For removal for this deck, we have On Thin Ice and we have Prismatic Ending, which are both very powerful white removal spells. For Prismatic Ending Converge, we have blue, white, and black off of Silent Clearing to be able to get the X count up to 3 for, Converge. And finally, we have Aether Vial. Aether Vial is just a card that helps you dump your hand very quickly. It can give you a little bit of fun tricks that you can do with this deck. So, like, you can flash in creatures on your opponent's turn. Most of our creatures are in the 2-drop slot. Like, we're not playing Mantis Rider, and we're not playing that many 1-drops comparably. So we just tick up Aether Vial to 2 and leave it there, and we'll be just fine. Now, out of the sideboard, because all of our permanents are 2 cost or less, we are able to run Lurrus as our companion. We have Engineered Explosives if we end up running against a deck playing a lot of 0-drops or playing a lot of 1-drops. We can play Engineered Explosives as sort of like Prismatic Ending, but also a Wrath. We have multiple On Thin Ice, which we can drop Prismatic Endings if we're playing against a deck that is playing large creatures, or creatures that are difficult to hit with Prismatic Ending. We got Kataki, War's Wage. This is excellent versus the Hammer Time deck, versus the Food deck. It's a very, very, very strong, like, Tabernacle of Pendrell Vale, but just for artifacts. We've got Seal of Cleansing, which is just repeatable, naturalize effectively, as long as we have Lurrus. And we have Lavinia. Lavinia basically is like a hedge versus, I would say Tron, really, but it's also good versus, like, the free spell decks. So, like, any of the decks that are cascading into stuff, they can't cascade into a spell and cast it for free, because Lavinia will counter that spell. So, my apologies for the long kind of deck tech explanation, and I'm going to go ahead and take this into a competitive league, and I will see you guys there. Also, I apologize if there are any editing mistakes. I've not updated the automatic editor script in a while, and I don't know how it's going to handle me shutting off Moto sounds. I'm not sure how it's going to handle, the new Stream Deck setup. So I might actually have to take some time, run this through a few times before you guys actually see this video. So if it's extra late, I apologize. I would like to play first. I will reveal Lurrus. And you know what? I'll keep this. That, if you can hear it, was Porter dropping his bone at my feet. Not sure why. That's a chew toy, that's not a throw toy. And we just played a lot of Frisbee, so you need to go lay down and take a break, buddy. He disagrees. Okay. So opponent mulligan to 6. Man, not playing with Moto sounds is really going to throw me. I had to turn it off because on this particular streaming client, I switched back to Streamlabs. The Moto sounds were, like, overlapping and literally, like, blasting out my eardrums in the headphones. It was just awful. So I shut them off. But I rely on the audio cues for certain actions when I play. So this is still, like, I'm still getting adjusted to that, especially when I'm trying to play seriously. So if I play a little bit worse than usual, even, I apologize. But, just doing what I can here. So, opponent leads on Breeding Pool into Crashing Footfalls. Alright, so we're just going to Meddling Mage Crashing Footfalls. Aether Vial we will tick up to 1. I could, I could Meddling Mage something else, but Crashing Footfalls is the best spell, I guess. They're probably going to have things like Fire and Ice. They're going to have things like the Bone Crusher Giant Stomp. They're going to have Brazen Borrower, Unsummon. So we name Human. We go blue-white. Cast an uncounterable Meddling Mage. Name Crashing Footfalls. Now, there's some notion that maybe I should wait and vial it in response to, like, the last, like, the Crashing Footfalls time counter removal. before the spell gets cast. And I think that's reasonable, but I am playing an aggro deck, and we need to get on the board, basically. All right, we get Thalia. So we go to our main phase. So, like, I could play Thalia's Lieutenant and Vial in the other Thalia's Lieutenant so they each get their own buff. But honestly, I think I'm just going to cast an uncounterable Thalia and then Vial in Thalia's Lieutenant, like, during combat or something. Thalia is very strong versus a lot of decks, especially things like my opponent's deck. They are going to Petty Theft Meddling Mage. That's fine. Play another Cavern. Name Human. Maybe attacking first was correct, but I was still thinking about using Thalia's Lieutenant in combat. I think I'm just going to put Meddling Mage back into play immediately. Name Crashing Footfalls again. Then pass. This stops them from casting a Shardless Agent into a Footfalls here. They have to have removal first, and if they have removal first, it'll be 3 mana to kill Meddling Mage, and okay. I will not be putting a counter on Aether Vial. Okay, we draw Champion of the Parish. So play a Silent Clearing. Play Champion of the Parish. Then play Thalia's Lieutenant. Then, in response to the triggers, Vial in another Thalia's Lieutenant. Counters everywhere. Go to combat. Smack him for a lot. Opponent goes down to 10, Crashing Footfalls, ticking down to 1 time counter. And the game is over. Paranoid about muting and unmuting myself. Simply because, like, I'm worried about the difference in the interface is throwing me a little bit. So we should probably bring in Lavinia, because Lavinia is effectively another Meddling Mage against this deck. They can't cascade into Crashing Footfalls. They can't suspend it. On Thin Ice is also somewhat reasonable, but the question is, what do I take out for Lavinia? And I think the answer is Sanctifier and maybe a Phantasmal Image. I don't really want to bring in On Thin Ice. It's effectively the same removal versus this deck for the tokens. It's slightly... I don't know if it's better. It's not better than Prismatic Ending. Well, it is better than Prismatic Ending versus the other creatures they play, like Brazen Borrower and such. They don't really have much that gets hit with Prismatic Ending, so I'm going to actually bring in On Thin Ice and Engineered Explosives. And we'll try it like this. Engineered Explosives just has the potential to kill multiple tokens at the same time if for some reason my opponent has a really fast start. So start by revealing Lurrus. This hand is not keepable because we have no lands. Mulligan. Alright, I can work with this. I'm going to put back... I think it's Phantasmal Image here. Because I don't want a Cavern of Souls on Illusion. So, opponent starts Misty Rainforest and passes. They did Mulligan. We draw another Esper Sentinel. So play Cavern, name Human, put out Champion, pass the turn. I mean, multiple champions is good for a start. So we'd like to draw Meddling Mage, we'd like to draw Lavinia, we'd like to draw Thalia. In the event that we don't, we'll just play a bunch of Esper Sentinels and stuff. Opponent has Dead and Gone. Okay. Opponent cracks Misty. So they're going to go for the Ice, our Cavern of Souls play here, I think. Yep. Okay. So they're probably just going to go for the turn 3 Cascade. If that's the case, I'm going to run out an Esper Sentinel here. At the very least, we'll get to draw a card, and we're going to need a little more power if we're going to end up beating our opponent. Without Aether Vial, this hand is, a little bit worse than it could be. So opponent Shardless Agents into Crashing Footfalls. We draw a second Thalia. That's not great. We untap. We draw Thalia's Lieutenant. Well, play Champion. Play an Esper Sentinel. Counter on Champion. Pass the turn. The problem is, though, we're not getting additional... we're not drawing any extra lands here. Okay, no blocks. Take 10, go to 8. Untap. We draw an Unsettled Mariner. Play Thalia's Lieutenant. Counters on everything. But I think we are slightly too slow here. Yeah, because if they have any other spell that's good, kind of like that, that just kills us. Okay. No, maybe I kept the wrong hand, but I really didn't want to go lower than 6 in this deck. I think we are set up correctly, so I'm just going to run it back. I would like to play first. Once again, reveal Lurrus. I apologize if you can hear the dog chewing. There's not a lot I can do about that. I will keep this hand just because we do have a Thalia. Okay, the opponent did mulligan to 6. So lead on Plains into Champion. Pass the turn. Opponent plays a Scalding Tarn and passes. We draw Cavern. Play Cavern. Name Human. Play Thalia. Okay, Champion of the Parish gets bigger. Go to combat. Attack for 2. Opponent cracks Scalding Tarn to get a Triome. They take 2. So, opponent has to have Dead from Dead and Gone to kill Thalia here. If they don't... Okay, they have Fury. Fury also works, and it's very unfortunate. Opponent pitches a Seasoned Pyromancer. Okay. We untap. We draw a Phantasmal Image. Play a Flooded Strand. Crack Flooded Strand. Get a Hallowed Fountain tapped. And play Thalia's Lieutenant. Pass the turn. So my plan right now is to just play multiple Phantasmal Images next turn. Which is not great if they have a Cascader, and they do. We untap. We draw Thalia's Lieutenant. So play a Flooded Strand, crack Flooded Strand, get a Plains. Play Thalia's Lieutenant. Always yield, always yield. Phantasmal Image. I could copy a Rhino, but honestly, I don't think that's the correct choice. Alright. Pass the turn. I would kind of like to draw a land here to put Lurrus into my hand. Opponent goes to combat. They attack with the Rhinos. I will block one with the 5/5. If they have a fire, they can kill it and the other Thalia's Lieutenant. Okay, they have a Violent Outburst, so they can trade. And they get 2 more Rhinos. I'd really like to draw an Engineered Explosives here. We end up taking 5. Opponent plays a Misty. We untap. We draw a Phantasmal Image. Well, unfortunately, because I fetched a second Plains, I did not expect to draw the 3rd Phantasmal Image. I can only play 1 Phantasmal Image this turn. So, Phantasmal Image, Thalia's Lieutenant. Counters everywhere. Alright, pass the turn. Opponent cracks Misty. Gets a Steam Vents tapped. Untaps, they draw. They play a Scalding Tarn. Shardless Agent, they cascade again. More Rhinos. They go to combat. They're gonna... Oh, they don't attack. Interesting. We untap. We get an Unsettled Mariner. So we Phantasmal Image first. Copy Thalia's Lieutenant. Counters everywhere. Then we play Unsettled Mariner. We do it in this order so that the Phantasmal Image Thalia's Lieutenant gets an extra counter. If I attack, they just block with the Shardless Agent, or like a Shardless Agent. We just die. So, okay. Opponent cracks Scalding Tarn for Steam Vents. They untap. I mean, if my opponent gets another Fury, they're going to clear my entire board. They go to combat. They don't attack. We untap. We draw On Thin Ice. So, on Thin Ice, take out a Rhino. Put Lurrus in her hand. Pass the turn. Opponent Violent Outburst. Okay, this is their last crashing footfalls. So Cascade cards other than Violent Outburst are basically dead at this point. But if they have a multiple targeting spell, we're done. Okay, Klothys is good. They are Hellbent. Okay, we would really like to draw a land. Because if we do, we can play this other Thalia's Lieutenant out of the grave. There you are, Meddling Mage. About forever too late. Okay, I need to look up my opponent's deck list really quick. So I have two options for what I can do this turn. I can either Meddling Mage or I can Lurrus and get back Champion. If I'm Meddling Mage, I'm pretty sure I name Fury. Yeah, I think I actually have to Meddling Mage. Okay. 1/1 counters to go around. Pass the turn. Opponent will be able to exile Thalia's Lieutenant from our grave, which is unfortunate. They also drain us. If we top deck Engineered Explosives, it's game over. I don't think I brought in all... Did I bring in all 3 Engineered Explosives? I don't remember at this point. Yeah, they exile Thalia's Lieutenant. They know what we're holding. Opponent goes to combat after drawing a card and passes. We draw... Come on, Explosives. Esper Sentinel. Well, play Lurrus. Play Champion. Counters everywhere. Go to combat. Attack for 10. We can't just sit back and do nothing. Okay, opponent triple blocks. That lets us take out 2 Rhinos. That does make a potential swing less deadly. It does give them another target for what they should take with Klothys, but I can at least play Thalia out of the grave that way. Okay. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They draw a card. Klothys exiles Thalia's Lieutenant. We go down to 9. They go to combat, and they swing for 16. So we can block. Block. I think we trade. And I think taking 4 here is okay. If they have Yeah, I was going to say if they have fire, we're done. It was basically whether they drew fire or fury first, and the trample will get us. Well, that's unfortunate. If we'd drawn one land a lot earlier, we would have had a lot more powerful board. If we had drawn any of our 8 2-mana creatures that would have interacted with that, we would have been fine. We had several turns to draw engineered explosives, provided I brought more than one in, and we just didn't. So, nothing to get upset about there. I'll see you guys in round 2. Alright, welcome to round 2, everybody. We start by revealing Lurrus. We got all 2 drops in the hand, but I actually think this hand is fine. If my opponent leads on a 1-mana permanent, we can Prismatic Ending it. And they're playing mono red, so I assume they will. We reveal Phantasmal Image off the top of our deck. So, lead on Snow-Covered Plains. Exile Goblin Guide, pass the turn. Feels kind of bad, we have to shock, but opponent is stuck on 1 mana. Because they didn't play a second land, I am going to play Thalia. This shuts off any non-creature spell if they don't top deck a land. And it shuts off most of the creatures they can play because they won't be able to swing past Thalia. Opponent suspends Riftbolt. So we play Thalia as Lieutenant. Put a counter on Thalia. Attack for 3. This means they have to Riftbolt Thalia. And that means they have to spend 1 mana to do it. So they still have to top deck a land to cast basically anything else. Okay, they did top deck a land. We untap. We draw an Esper Sentinel. So we can either play Vial and Sentinel, or we can play Thalia as Lieutenant. And I think we play Thalia as Lieutenant. I would really prefer to draw another land and play like Thalia's Lieutenant Sentinel in the same turn. Go to combat. Attack for 3. Opponent takes 3, goes to 14. If they don't crack their Wooded Foothills until their turn, they have a Searing Blaze. They fetch up a Sacred Foundry and shock. They bolt our face, so they're still intent on racing. Okay. We untap, we draw a Cavern. So Cavern, name human. Play Esper Sentinel. I think I would rather put the 1/1 counter on Esper Sentinel because of its other text than have the extra counter on Thalia's Lieutenant, and that's dictating what the order of us casting our spells is. You know, if our opponent has a Bolt and they want to kill Thalia's Lieutenant here, or they have a Boros Charm for our face, play another Thalia's Lieutenant. Counters everywhere. Go to combat. Attack them for 10. They basically have to have Bolt to kill us. And that is possible. If they can't play a shock, they can't play a fetch. And if they don't have Bolt, it would have to be like Bolt Skullcrack. So they either need Bolt, or they need like Bolt, 2 mana, 3 damage burn spell, and a Painless Land. And they don't have it. So that gets us our victory. Now, versus Burn. The question is, what do we sideboard? I'm not convinced that Lavinia is better than Phantasmal Image here, even though my opponent's playing Riftbolt. Fun fact, if you play Thalia and you play Lavinia, and your opponent suspends Riftbolt and then pays 1 for Riftbolt coming off suspend, Lavinia will not counter it. If they don't have 3 mana, though, they won't be able to cast it from exile. So there's like kind of like a half non-bow there. I don't actually think we're going to make any adjustments. I think Prismatic Ending is on average going to be better than On Thin Ice, but they're about equivalent here. I don't think we need Engineered Explosives, so we're just going to run it back. Unsettled Mariner and Thalia are huge in this matchup, and I think Phantasmal Image ends up being better than Lavinia simply because of the ability to clone Unsettled Mariner. So that's just the route we're going to go. I'm going to keep this hand. Now, I can either start on Prismatic Ending, or I can start on Aether Vial. And I think it depends on what my opponent starts with their first play. If they start with a creature, I'm okay leading on Prismatic Ending, because then I can play Sentinel and Vial after the fact. Okay, we draw Thalia's Lieutenant. I think I want to stop this damage as quickly as possible. This is where a little bit of my inexperience playing this deck is going to show. I don't know which is better. playing Vial or playing Ending here. Playing Vial means I take 2 more damage guaranteed, but it means I'm way behind on developing my board. So if I was more accustomed to playing humans and I knew what my damage output would be with this hand on any given turn, let's see. If I play Vial, next turn I can play Sentinel and Lieutenant, or Sentinel and Mariner. I think actually going with Aether Vial is correct here. So we'll name human, play Aether Vial. Now if my opponent has a Smash to Smithereens as their 2-mana spell, then we're kind of in for it, but opponent goes to combat, attacks for 2. This does give us another chance at drawing a land. Okay, it's a Flooded Strand. We take 2 and go to 16. Then they Lava Spike us. So Aether Vial going up to 1. Okay, I like our odds. They just got a lot better. Because my opponent only has 1 mana, I'm going to go with Unsettled Mariner here. And I'm going to go with Esper Sentinel off of Aether Vial. If they had played another land, I probably would have played Thalia's Lieutenant, and then in response to its trigger, I would have vialed in Esper Sentinel. Opponent attacks for 2. I will not be blocking this. Aether Vial on top of our deck. We really don't want that. So we'll take the damage. So untap, take up Vial to 2. Draw another Aether Vial. Play a Flooded Strand. Play Thalia's Lieutenant. Because we're trying to get more damage on board. Okay. And in response to this, activate Vial. Okay, opponent might be going for a Searing Blaze here. No, it can't be Searing Blaze. Because it would get countered by Mariner. Has to be a 1-mana burn spell. Or a path. So let's try and do it this order. Maybe they'll pay for Sentinel and let it get countered by Mariner. Okay, they did not. Mariner gets pathed. Get another Plains. Now the question is, do we put in another Lieutenant or do we put in Thalia? And I think the answer is we put in Thalia. Because if my opponent doesn't draw another land, they are also kind of stuck. It also gives us a great blocker for this Goblin Guide. Alternatively, I could just fetch a basic Plains and get rid of the Goblin Guide, because that stops my opponent from having another 1-mana removal spell. But I think what I'm going to do is just wait, because if they have removal for Thalia and then attack with Goblin Guide, we can manipulate our top deck potentially by using this Flooded Strand. Okay. They Lightning Bolt Thalia. We draw another card. It's an Aether Vial. They go to combat. They do not attack. Crack Flooded Strand. Go for the Hallowed Fountain. Untap. We leave Vial on 2. I could take it up to 3 and put Lurrus in my hand, and then play Lurrus, because Lurrus has lifelink. But I don't think we need to do that. Okay, we get an Unsettled Mariner, which is good. Oh, hang on. Let's play Unsettled Mariner. Then we can on Thin Ice to kill Goblin Guide. Put Thalia's Lieutenant into play. Make the big board. Go to combat. Attack for 8. And opponent with only 2 lands is going to have a huge amount of trouble dealing 10 damage to us. I guess we play the other Vial here. Like, opponent would need a 3rd land and then, like, multiple Deflecting Palms, I think, to kill us. I think that's the only spell that Burn would play that would win out of that position. So, we end up winning, which is good. I'll see you guys in round 3. Alrighty, welcome back to round 3. We will be playing first. Start by revealing Lurrus. And this hand's not crazy, but has the potential to be good. If the Sanctifier en-Vec negates our opponent's removal, this hand becomes really good. So lead on Flooded Strand, pass the turn. Opponent leads on Polluted Delta. Crack Flooded Strand. Let's get a Hallowed Fountain tapped. Untap. Draw Thalia. New plan. Name human. Play Thalia. Uncounterably. Pass the turn. This is only worse against Fatal Push. Because they could still Fatal Push on their turn. Maybe I should have still played Sanctifier en-Vec, but I feel like against most decks, Thalia is just better. Okay, we draw another Prismatic Ending. Play Silent Clearing. I think I'm going to play Sanctifier this turn, so I'm just going to attack with Thalia before doing anything else. Okay. That tells me my opponent might be a Faithful Mending deck. And if we play Sanctifier and they're the Reanimator deck, they're going to have a tough time because most of their removal will not be able to kill Sanctifier. And if they ditch any of the reanimation targets or spells, it's just going to get exiled. So, if my opponent has a third untapped land in Prismatic Ending, they will be able to answer Sanctifier en-Vec. They have Solitude. Okay. Kind of hating the fact that those are creatures right now. Thalia was good against, like, all free spells. And unfortunately... those are creatures. So, replay Sanctifier en-Vec, pass the turn. I was hoping for another land there so we could play Thalia's Lieutenant alongside it. Could have tried to, or could have hardcasted on Thin Ice to kill Teferi. Don't think that was correct. Opponent plays a Swamp. They got 4 mana now. They persist Solitude. Okay. That's unfortunate. We get a Phantasmal Image. So we cannot on Thin Ice because we don't have a snow land. Seems like a large oversight. We also can't Prismatic Ending because we have a colorless land. So we're running up into some awkward mana situation in this deck. Pass the turn. I mean, at least they had to blow a Persist to kill the Sanctifier. But I evoke a Mull Drifter, okay. I can Phantasmal Image their Solitude if I think that's worth it. We get a Meddling Mage. Could also Phantasmal Image Mull Drifter. If I Phantasmal Image Mull Drifter and I draw a... I think we gotta go with the Solitude play, really. There's no way for me to draw cards this turn unless I copy Mull Drifter. And if I do that, it's only good if I draw a snow land. Yeah, we're going to Phantasmal Image Solitude. And we have to attack Teferi so that it doesn't bounce anything. Oh, I didn't even see the Ephemerate. This is going with those audio cues. I completely missed that my opponent cast Ephemerate, which is slightly annoying, but at least it doesn't kill Phantasmal Image. It kills it, it doesn't exile it. So the other problem that I'm having right now, and I don't know, I think I brought this up on stream. They take Meddling Mage. That's kind of irritating. So we untap. We draw an Aether Vial. Let's play Thalia's Lieutenant. Counters on stuff. The other problem that I'm having is for like the last 4 to 5 months, I was on ADHD medication of a non-stimulant variety, which was excellent. It was doing major, fantastic work for me. Improved like every aspect of my life by a huge, massive margin. There's like no question. We gotta sack Thalia's Lieutenant. We gotta sack Prismatic Ending. And so it was actually helping me play Magic because I was able to think a little bit further ahead when I was paying attention. So not when I was streaming, basically, because I was paying attention to something else. But if we draw Phantasmal Image, we can hit Archon of Cruelty, and that's pretty fantastic. Tick up Aether Vial to 1, but I had to stop. I was running into... I actually encountered a really rare side effect that had the potential for permanent damage, and so I was basically told to stop taking the medication immediately. And it was in my system long enough for me to officiate a wedding properly, and then after that, I'm back to my old self. But, 4 months is a long time to forget how to cope with severe ADHD. Like, I lived so many years of my life like this that you would think, like, oh, you'd be fine with it. You went so long dealing with it, you're going to be all right. You just do what you did before. It's like, yeah, 4 months was long enough to forget when I was thinking, like, oh, I'm never going to have to live like that again. I'll be able to take meds and everything will be fine. And no, 4 months is exactly the period of time where it takes to forget how you ever lived that way. And it's awful. I don't recommend it. Oh my god. I'm going to unsummon my On Thin Ice. Yep. But... what was I going to bring in this matchup? I'm trying to do too many things at once, and so I'm kind of like stalling mentally here. I need On Thin Ice, and it's way better than Prismatic Ending. Opponent doesn't suspend anything. Okay, run it back. Yeah, so all of that was basically a preface for I'm going to be worse at Magic than I was, at least in the short term, until I can get a different... until I can handle the medical portion differently. I will be keeping this. We can lead on champion, we can play double Esper Sentinel, or we can play Sanctifier, depending on what our opponent does. We do have to be aware of our opponent being able to answer Sanctifier. If we draw a blue land, we can Phantasmal Image Sanctifier. So, yeah. Long story short, Kano has a terrible attention span, and that's probably where the meme of Kano can't read comes from. But, it's all in good fun. We draw a Cavern, which I might name Illusion on. Let's go with the Esper Sentinel plays. If my opponent has a Solitude, then, we're probably screwed. Because, if my opponent has Solitude, they could Solitude an Esper Sentinel, then, ephemerate it, and then just block down the champion, and what do we do? Alright, opponent plays Polluted Delta. Cracks Polluted Delta, they get Watery Grave. Here comes that Solitude. Yep, taking out an Esper Sentinel. And I got Ephemerate, and they can pay for the other Esper Sentinel. Now they can take out Champion and have a 3-2 blocker, and, what do we do? So, I'm probably going to have to play Cavern on Illusion. I could Phantasmal Image their Solitude. If I wait and try and get an Archon, the problem becomes they'll have stuff to sack to it that isn't the Archon, their Archon, and ours is way more fragile. The other problem is if I wait on doing this, I'm probably going to get griefed. And if I get griefed, it's all over anyway. If I play out Sanctifier this turn, Ephemerate's coming off Suspend. So really the only play that I have is to name Illusion. This only targets your creatures, right? Yeah, okay. And the only way this goes wrong is if my opponent has... another Solitude that they could flash in and then flicker immediately. If they did, they'd basically be out of cards, but so would we. Okay, we untap. We draw a Snow-Covered Island. And now our mana is slightly awkward. So we go to combat. Attack for 4. Black, white. They're going to Fatal Push the Esper Sentinel. They could have actually Fatal Push to kill Solitude there. So I'm not sure why they did that. This is probably my best chance to land Sanctifier, though. Yeah, because Fatal Push doesn't have to target things with CMC 2 or less. You can cast it targeting any creature. It just, whether or not it will actually destroy it, depends on the CMC. So they kill Sanctifier en-Vec with a Prismatic Ending, and that is unfortunate. We draw another snow-covered island, so I can, like, put Lurrus into my hand, and I guess play out Thalia's Lieutenant, even though that doesn't really do anything. Attack our opponent for 3. I could have kept it in my hand. That way, if my opponent had some sort of targeted discard, we could have discarded Thalia's Lieutenant, then played Lurrus, and... Well, actually, if I play Lurrus, I can't play anything else. Opponent Faithful Mending. I would really like to draw another Sanctifier. Well, I mean... On Thin Ice is technically an answer. So we attack for 4. The problem with On Thin Ice is I have to discard Lurrus when my opponent reanimates this Archon. Which is awful. It feels so bad. And, like, if they have, like, Grief and Reanimate, it's just, like, you know, what the heck do you even do? And there it is. Alright, so sack the 1/1, discard Lurrus, because our mana is actually really awkward right now. I'm hoping for Phantasmal Image. And it's not a Phantasmal Image. Alright, so on Thin Ice, Archon. I'm going to hold on to this Plains. As potential discard fodder if I get something that's like a reactive spell for us, like another On Thin Ice. This is another Faithful Mending? It is. This card really powered up decks like this one. Okay, Thalia is good. Go to combat. Attack for 3. Take our opponent down to 6. Play Thalia. Pass the turn. The other problem is if my opponent casts... Or if they get a Prismatic Ending, they can just Prismatic Ending on Thin Ice. So even though it's our only removal to answer my opponent's really big cards... Okay, they persist a Muldrifter. If we draw removal for that Muldrifter, we win. That is not removal for a Muldrifter. So go to combat. Attack for 5. Opponent has to block or they die. They go to 3. We go up to 39. I will play Aether Vial just because it makes our mana slightly less awkward to you know, be putting stuff into play. And maybe the instant speed trickery matters. Okay. Opponent has a lot of mana. They crack Marsh Flats. They go down to 2. So any creature we have is lethal. Play a Plains. 4 mana. For a Teferi. So they have to unsummon Thalia. Okay, never mind. So this is why we were holding the snow-covered Plains in hand. We're going to get rid of Solitude. And we have to discard snow-covered Plains. The reason that I did not get rid of Thalia is because of the tax with my opponent only having 1 mana here. Okay. Aether Vial going up to 1. We draw another On Thin Ice. So, On Thin Ice, take out the Archon, go to combat. I don't think killing Teferi is going to matter, because the only instant speed thing we're going to do is play off of Aether Vial. I don't know, maybe sacking Thalia was better. I mean, my opponent's going to be flashing back Faithful Mendings and stuff, so they're going to be out of range here for a little bit as long as I keep drawing things that aren't board presence. Us being forced to sack that Lurrus sucks so hard. And that's going to get rid of our only creature and our removal for that Archon. We have so much life, but it's not going to matter. Yep. That's game. They were even going to ephemerate that Archon to get us to discard this Flooded Strand on our draw step. That's pretty strong. That's a very strong reanimator deck. I think Sanctifier is our best way to combat that. You know, besides Meddling Mage. Meddling Mage on spells that matter. I think part of the problem is I kept hands without Aether Vial on turn 1, so it's not like we could get stuff out quickly. The other problem is Solitude is amazing removal against us. Like, Sanctifier blanks black removal, so like our opponent was playing Fatal Push, and Thalia mitigates instant sorcery speed or instant sorcery removal because it taxes it. And so same with the Changeling, and the Changeling is even somewhat okay against Solitude. The problem was we just didn't draw Meddling Mage, and we just didn't draw the Changeling at any time that it mattered. So I think that deck is beatable. That is a tough matchup, even though we have tools to fight it, I think. So I'll see you guys in round 4. All right, welcome to round 4. We're on the play. We reveal Lurrus, and this hand seems acceptable, so we will keep. I'm going to start on snow-covered plains into Aether Vial rather than Cavern, because I don't know what my opponent's playing, and for a single turn, I can pretend that I'm playing a weird Hammer Time deck. Or like an affinity of some kind. Opponent leads on Radiant Fountain into Expedition Map. Okay. Aether Vial, going to go up to 1. We draw Esper Sentinel. So we play Cavern, name Human, and we get to do a little bit of trickery here. I could play Thalia if I suspected my opponent was playing something like Dice Factory, but I think Thalia's Lieutenant and Esper Sentinel are a better way to go here. So in response to the trigger, we are going to Vial in Esper Sentinel. Okay, that way we get a counter on Thalia's Lieutenant and a counter on Esper Sentinel. Pass the turn. Next turn, we can play Thalia, and then we can Vial in a Phantasmal Image on Thalia's Lieutenant, and everything becomes awesome. So take up Vial to 2. We draw Prismatic Ending. Now I could cast Prismatic Ending, but it would never kill anything. They would just sack map response, because that's probably what they're doing anyway. So play Thalia. Counter on Thalia's Lieutenant. Go to combat. Yeah, that hand wasn't getting anywhere very quickly. Okay. So, opponent is playing Amulet Titan. What do we need versus Amulet Titan? Amulet Titan wins with Valakut. They win with Titan, of course. Prismatic Ending is good versus the Amulet. It's decent versus the Dryad. But I think I want to cut 1 for 1 on Thin Ice. Does Lavinia help here? Lavinia does help because even though they don't cast anything... Oh, it's only non-creature spells that it prevents the player from casting. So my opponent could still like play 3 bounce lands in a turn, and even with only 1 bounce land, they could play 2 Dryads, or they could play a Primeval Titan. So Lavinia is actually not great here. The only thing Lavinia is good against is Summoner's Pact, which there's some notion that maybe that's what we need to be doing. I think I need to play some Seals of Cleansing as well. I think that's slightly better than Phantasmal Image. Seal of Cleansing, we can kill Dryad, which will stop a Valakut from being lethal if that happens. Okay, I cannot keep this. This is all 2 drops with a Prismatic Ending. If I knew I was drawing a land, and I knew my opponent was going to lead on map or lead on Amulet, this hand would be keepable. But we have better 6s, like this one. I will be keeping this, and I'm going to put back Flooded Strand. Opponent leads on Sunhome into Amulet. We untap. We draw Snow-Covered Plains. So the question now is, do we lead on Sentinel, Champion, or Aether Vial? And I think the answer is we lead on Aether Vial. So name Human on Cavern. Play Vial. Vial makes our future draws better. Okay, opponent floats mana. Plays a bounce land, bounces Sunhome, plays Dryad, and plays Valakut. Untapping Valakut. We untap. Vial going up to 1. We draw Silent Clearing. So play a Snow-Covered Plains. Play Champion. Play Champion. And yeah, I am just going to Vial in Esper Sentinel here. Pass the turn. Oh, maybe I should be playing Kataki if they're playing Urza's Saga. I forgot that was a thing. Alright, we untap. Vial goes up to 2, and we draw Sanctifier. So we play Silent Clearing. Sack Silent Clearing. We get a Thalia's Lieutenant. Go to combat. Attack with the Champions. I don't think my opponent will block. We will Vial in Thalia's Lieutenant. Make everything bigger. Hit our opponent for 9. Like, there's still the chance we just get instant deleted. So Saga ticks up to 2. Okay. They cast Summoner's Pact, so it looks like they're going for a Titan play here. I'm not sure if we're dead. I think they've got... Okay, they have 12 damage. If this was Hanware Garrison rather than Slayer Stronghold, we would be in enormous trouble. No, they're still floating mana. They had 7, not 6. So they can actually untap this, make white mana because of Dryad, give this haste, get 2 more lands, and kill us. Wow. We don't even have to block or take damage. We just die to the trigger. So... I think I do need to be running Prismatic Ending. I don't know... Okay, Sanctifier is probably not that great. We'll bring the Phantasmal Images back in. The Seal of Cleansing is fine. The Esper Sentinel is like a little suspect. We do need to get on board with 1-mana stuff. I don't know. I feel like if my opponent casts Titan, I'm just dead. So maybe On Thin Ice is not actually that great here. I get slightly better than Prismatic Ending at taking out the Dryad. So I'm going to bring in the other Seal of Cleansing and a Singleton Kataki over the 3rd and 4th On Thin Ice. I have no idea if that's correct. This is just my best guess. I would like to play first. So we'll reveal Lurrus. This is a mulligan. I can work with this. It's not great. So we put back, I guess, Seal of Cleansing. We need to draw white mana, though. Because we're probably going to Vial in Champion and then Vial in Meddling Mage. The question is, what do we name with Meddling Mage? And I think the answer is either Dryad or Primeval Titan. It's probably Primeval Titan. It kind of depends on what they play and how fast. If we top deck white mana right off the bat, this is fantastic, but... Opponent fetches up a forest, then plays an expedition map. Aether Vial, going to tick up to 1. We draw a Seal of Cleansing. They're probably just going to end up cracking map. So I think we're just going to put in Champion on their end step. Us not drawing a second land, that was pretty bad. Maybe I should have gone to 5. Alright, opponent plays Windswept Teeth and cracks it. Gets a forest. And passes. So on their end step, Vial in Champion. Untap. Put Vial on 2. We draw Thalia. Go to combat. Attack for 1. Vial in Meddling Mage. And I think I'm going to go with Dryad of the Elysian Grove. And the reason that I'm doing that is their hand isn't particularly fast. They're probably going to go get like Urza's Saga or something here. Saga is a slow tutor for Amulet. And without Dryad, they're not going to have that much ramp unless they like chain Explorers or something. Watch them play Azusa and like blow me out of the water. Or Azusa? I think that's how you say that. Anyway. So opponent fetched up Urza's Saga. Okay. If we top deck a white land, we can take out Saga, and then that's probably game because we can start vialing in Thalia and all that stuff. So we untap. Vial is going to stay on 2. We draw Flooded Strand, crack Flooded Strand, get a Plains, play Seal of Cleansing, nuke Saga, go to combat, Vial, in Thalia, counter on Champion, hit them for 5. This is working out. It's working out so far. So they played this Saga, and they scoop. Nice. So we're 2-2. Let's see if we can't win our entry back. I'll see you guys in round 5. All right, and we're on the play for round 5. I feel like we've gotten very lucky with play versus draw playing this deck. If I was on the play this often playing Tron, I think I would 5-0 a lot more. This is not a keepable hand, though, so we are going to mulligan to 6. And this is not amazing, but it is serviceable, so I will keep. I'm going to put back On Thin Ice. Versus an unknown opponent, I think I would rather have the creatures. So, lead on champion, pass the turn. Opponent did keep a hand of 7. Opponent leads on a tap land. We untap. We draw Unsettled Mariner. I'm going to fetch up a Hallowed Fountain, and I think the Unsettled Mariner is the way to go here. I can follow basically everything up with Thalia's Lieutenant, but if I draw a land, I think the play is Sentinel and Image on Mariner. Because Mariner actually stops things like Valakut and other hard removal spells. Like, hard removal spells, things that target you, like, they all get way worse when Unsettled Mariner hits the board. It's basically like a limited Thalia, which is pretty great. Red-green, opponent explores. What deck's playing Explore right now? This could be like Polymorph. This is definitely Polymorph. Okay. So play Snow-Covered Plains. Play Esper Sentinel. Then play Thalia's Lieutenant. Go to combat. Hit them for 8. There's not much we can do against, like, Velomachus or... I mean, if they polymorph into Emrakul, we shouldn't die, because we'll have one more attack and it should be lethal. I've not seen this deck in a while, mainly because I haven't been playing as much Magic due to all of the other life circumstances. Opponent plays Ren and 6. We draw a Cavern. Well, I mean, like... It's looking good for us. They pick up a land. They play an Arid Mesa. They crack Arid Mesa, get a Dwarven Mine. I think they're 1 mana short of playing a Polymorph. Lightning Bolt to kill Unsettled Mariner. Paying for it. And they crack for white. Prismatic Ending, the champion. We untap and draw a Silent Clearing. So... play Silent Clearing. Let's go blue-white, Phantasmal Image, copying Thalia's Lieutenant. Go to combat. Attack our opponent for lethal, so they're forced to block. I think they will still get the Polymorph off, because they can uptick to pick up Arid Mesa, fetch up another Dwarven Mine, and then Polymorph. So there's actually a chance we're still dead, but... Opponent is at a very low life total. And if they don't have a Polymorph in hand, and they don't have a Sweeper, so opponent goes down to 1. They fetch up a Dwarven Mine. They get a Dwarf token. Opponent is tapping and untapping. I mean, like, if they have Indomitable Creativity, they could hit this Thalia's Lieutenant and the Dwarf token. So they're going to hit our 3/3 and the Dwarf token. Okay, so we get to draw. It's a land. We get an Aether Vial. They get a Primeval Titan. Okay. So this means they get downtick Ren and 6. We get 2 draws at a... Oh, they can actually kill my whole board. Alright then. And we do not have anything with haste. So the question is, do I crack this Silent Clearing? And I think the answer is yes. Okay, that's unfortunate. Aether Vial ticking up to 1. We draw Unsettled Mariner. Sack Silent Clearing, another Aether Vial. I think I'm dead. Because my opponent can put a whole bunch of lands into play. Yeah, I'm dead. Alright. It's like we could play an Unsettled Mariner, but they don't even have to tap mana. They can just attack and then get a Valakut and a Mountain. And they have enough untapped lands they could just target us until we're dead. I'm going to bring in the On Thin Ice. I don't think Seal of Cleansing is important. I don't think Kataki is important. Lavinia doesn't seem helpful. Engineered Explosives is kind of instant speed removal for a token, but I'm not even convinced that that's good. I'm going to cut a Phantasmal Image and an Esper Sentinel, I think. I'll try it like this. Like, Sanctifier at least survives lightning bolts. It doesn't survive Valakut, because the triggers from Valakut are technically colorless, but I would like to play first. Yeah, I think we need a 1-drop or an Aether Vial. Well, it's not exactly what I was hoping for, but I will keep this. We'll put back a clearing, lead on a plains, and pass the turn. So we'll play Thalia and pass. Opponent untaps. They play a Scalding Tarn. They have a Lightning Bolt. They can kill Thalia. We untap and draw Sanctifier. Play a Silent Clearing. Go to combat. Attack for 2. Opponent takes 2. Play Sanctifier. Pass the turn. Opponent cracks Scalding Tarn. They get a Ketria Triome. They fetch with Wooded Foothills. They explore. We draw a Snow-Covered Plains. So play the Plains. Sack a clearing. We get Meddling Mage, which we can't cast. Play Thalia's Lieutenant. Go to combat. Attack for 6. Hit them to 8. Pass the turn. Alright, so they Prismatic Ending to kill Thalia. They strike it rich to make a treasure. We untap. We draw Cavern. Play Cavern. Name Human. Prismatic Ending to kill the treasure token. Meddling Mage. We'll name Indomitable Creativity. Counter on the Lieutenant. Go to combat. Attack for 5. Okay, they can't flashback Strike It Rich, and they would die anyway if they did. But Sanctifier en-Vec coming in the clutch there. So my opponent would need, like, fetch land into... Okay. They need the other red polymorph that I can't remember the name of. The 4-mana one that exiles the target. Alright, run it back. Alright, final game, we're on the draw. We need a good, strong opener. Need some disruption tools. Let's see if we got it. This isn't it. This is not it at all, really. I think we're playing slightly too many basic islands. I will keep this. I will put back... I think Phantasmal Image has to go. We need 2 lands. And the question there was whether we needed Unsettled Mariner or Phantasmal Image or Thalia's Lieutenant. And I think the way to go about it was... do I Prismatic Ending right off the bat? I think I'm gonna. Leading on Strike It Rich might be free. But something in my jank instincts told me I needed to get rid of that. Alright. It didn't do much. So we can either play Sentinel, Vial, or Mariner here. And I think we play Mariner. If I had let on Vial, we could have done something different, and I probably should have. But that double Strike It Rich would have meant they'd had mana early. Like, they would have had the right amount of mana early. Okay, opponent plays Wrenn and 6. They have no lands to pick up yet. There's a land. They crack Wooded Foothills. They get a Raugrun Triome. They can pick up Wooded Foothills. We untap and draw Silent Clearing. So, play Esper Sentinel. Play Thalia's Lieutenant. And I don't think we attack Wrenn and 6. I think we attack our opponent. Because we really can't stop Wrenn and 6 from doing anything. I could have attacked it, and then they would have lost it if they downticked to kill Thalia's lieutenant, but I'm not even sure that's good. Like, in theory, they just polymorph this turn, right? So they're going to downtick to kill Thalia's lieutenant. They're paying for the Unsettled Mariner trigger. They're holding a Wooded Foothills. Okay, they play Dwarven Mine. So if they have the creativity, then they have the creativity. And there's not much we can do about it. They could be flashing back Strike It Rich. If they are, I basically have to... I basically have to draw Meddling Mage. Which at this point might not even do anything. I mean, Esper Sentinel... Whatever they do, Esper Sentinel in theory taxes it. So if this is a Prismatic Ending, they have to pay 2 to stop me from drawing a card. Alright, so we'll start with the Unsettled Mariner trigger. They have to pay 1. Okay. Now they have to pay 2 to stop us from drawing a card, and they do. Okay, so we lose the Sentinel. Draw a Snow-Covered Island. I think because we basically have to draw a Meddling Mage here. I think we play Silent Clearing, and we sack it using a white mana. Okay, we didn't draw anything. Go to combat. I guess we'll attack and kill Ren in 6, because it's like an opportunity target here. Opponent chumps. I guess that guarantees a land drop. Play Aether Vial. I saw this going differently in my mind. As long as Mariner's on board, they can't just Valakut us to death. So they downtick to Fairy, pay for Mariner, we have to pick up Mariner. Then they can just play a fetch land and get a Dwarven Mine. Or they play a Stomping Ground. I mean, they could just be on the border of Titan, right? So, Aether Vial going to 1. We draw nothing. Cavern, name human. Play Mariner. Pass the turn. Now, this is not looking good. We've drawn way too many lands. In fact, I think we've drawn exclusively lands and that Aether Vial. You could argue that my Prismatic Ending at the beginning of this game was a little bit aggressive, but at the same time, I'm not convinced it was a bad play. There's no Titan yet. Vial going up to 2. We draw Sanctifier. So, play Sanctifier. I'm going to pump fake that I have something instant speed off the Vial. Not sure if that changes my opponent's decision or not. All this really does is exile the Strike It Riches from the graveyard. Oh, they can flash it at instant speed. I didn't even think about that. And they get a Dwarven Mine. Okay, so we accomplish nothing, as usual. Put Lurrus into our hand. Go to combat. I'll attack to Fairy. I'm not sure it'll matter. Okay. Pass the turn. Opponent explores. I mean, if they're just top-decking mountains that aren't anything else, like, maybe we have a chance. But something tells me that's not the case. They play a Dwarven Mine out of hand. They're going to kill Sanctifier? That's interesting. I guess that's their only way of doing that, and they're playing the long game if they're doing this. Because if they were going to just combo kill us, they would have killed Unsettled Mariner first. They pick up Scalding Tarn. Okay. We untap. Vial, I think, is going to stay on 2. We draw Champion. Okay. So play Champion. Maybe I should have put this on 3. Because I can't play anything if I play Lurrus. In fact, if I just play Lurrus, they're probably going to kill it. Shouldn't have played out that Champion either, because they're just going to downtick Ren in 6. I got ahead of myself. I shouldn't have played Champion. What I should have done is play Lurrus and then play Sanctifier. I can't even do that. I had to put Aether Vial on 3. Oh, well. We learned something today. I may have just thrown this game, but I think... Honestly, I think we're in a situation where our opponent is Like, the only reason we're still alive is because our opponent is getting unlucky. I don't think we're going to win this game, and I don't think from, like, turn 3 on we were going to win this game. Opponent gets a redraw. Don't they have a Wooded Foothills in hand? I'm surprised they're not thinning their deck. Okay. Okay, no matter what it is that they're playing for 6 mana, I guarantee we die to it. Yep. So they can get Valakut, and then fetch 2 lands, and we lose. Alright. And the reason... Actually, they can just get Valakut Mountain, kill the Unsettled Mariner, and then fetch Mountain, and attack, and... Like, what are we going to do at that point? Alright, so what do I think about this deck? This deck is interesting to me. I'm always happy to see Lavinia play, even if it's in the sideboard. I've had a lot of fun brewing around this, and, like, Lavinia Knowledge Pool is a fun game plan, and that sort of thing. I think if you are a more inexperienced Magic player and you have not played a lot of humans, I would recommend playing the version of humans that plays a lot more, or a lot of other colors. It's more expensive, for sure, but I think the deck is easier to pilot, and I think it's easier to pilot because of Freebooter, specifically. Freebooter Meddling Mage is a combo that just, like, it's so backbreaking. Like, when it's good, it's great, and when it's bad, it's still good. Because, like, if you play Freebooter, you look at your opponent's hand, and then they kill your Freebooter, like, you can still Meddling Mage with some accuracy of what they're going to get, right? And Esper Sentinel drawing you cards is great, but I don't think it's going to be good enough on average. Now, this version is better versus, like, a meta that you're seeing a lot of Blood Moon in, because we're playing so many basics. But also, the problem is we're playing so many islands. This deck is almost completely mono-white. If there was a blue-white sack land, this deck would be way better, but so would a lot of other decks. On Thin Ice was awkward one time because we didn't have the snow land. Prismatic Ending was awkward at the same time because we had a Cavern. It feels like, to me... I don't think this deck is a bad deck at all, by the way, and I think we could have easily 3-2'd or 4-1'd this league, depending on how some games went. I think we should have won the first round. We just got unlucky. And we could have won that last round. And even the other round we lost, we could have won. The problem is, if Prismatic Ending had not seen print, if Prismatic Ending didn't exist, Sanctifier en-Vec would be an incredibly crazy strong card. Like the Reanimator deck would be having problems. Like, your opponent would have Path, right? In that scenario. And Path gives you something. Whereas Prismatic Ending doesn't give you anything. I feel like the difference between the, like, 3, 4, 5 color humans deck and this humans deck is they play about the same. This is less colors of mana, tuned to fight a few different decks, but all of those decks have, like, counter hate for the hate that you have for them. So, like, Unsettled Mariner is great, especially versus Valakut, but if your opponent can, like, time their land drops to kill Unsettled Mariner, it's not that great. If you're not snowballing from turn 1 on, I think humans is bad, and I think I kept a few hands that just didn't do that, and a few of my sequences were bad. I know I should have been playing Aether Vial first, in several of those situations. At least one of them. But the difference between the 3, 4, 5 color humans deck and this humans deck is they play about the same, except the synergies in the 5 color deck are stronger, and you don't have these incidental anti-synergies. Like, the mana base, I think, is actually better in the 5 color deck than it is in this one. And this one's making a concession for Prismatic Ending, it's making a concession for Sanctifier, it's making a concession for Phantasmal Image, and in the 5 color humans deck, you also have a little bit better late game. Like, you lose access to Lurrus, but I don't think Lurrus is that important for a deck like this, especially if you're not playing Bauble. And, you know, if you're playing Bauble, you ought to be playing the Delirium cards, because it's just, like, that is so much stronger than what we've got going on here. And I think I think if you were to play this deck, you could probably get away with just completely sideboarding on Thin Ice, maybe sideboarding Sanctifier en-Vec, and playing Baubles. Because Lurrus Bauble is a fantastic thing to be playing in any aggro deck. You're not aggro combo, you're not hammer, so like you can afford to play into the mid-range / late game. But I think I would prefer the 5-color Humans deck to playing this one. It's not that this one is bad, I just think that version is better. Because without Lurrus Bauble, your mid to late game is kind of bad, and with your... Like, you don't have the ability to draw out. Like, if your opponent has the 2 or 3 removal spells that happen to dodge your various protections and taxes, you're going to have a bad time. Because this deck has to snowball to be aggressive and win early. And if your opponent has spot removal that just happens to be good against what you have, it's not going to work. And, you know, having Sanctifier en-Vec be protection against black and red is great, but that's not going to stop your Thalia from getting bolted. It's not going to stop Sanctifier from getting Prismatic Ending or Pathed. It's not going to stop, you know, your Unsettled Mariner. Like, when you have Freebooter, though, you can take a removal spell from their hand, and if they only have one removal spell, you have completely taken them off removal, and you can snowball harder. Just because you're going to have more stuff on board, then you can build a big win with Thalia's Lieutenant. And in the 5-color Humans deck, you can top deck into things like General Kudrow, which is another Anthem. You can top deck into Mantis Rider, which is immediate haste damage, which I think we got the Polymorph or Titan deck down to 1 HP, and then we lost. And it's just like, yeah, if I could top deck a Mantis Rider that turn and play it, I would have won. And so I can see what this deck was going for. But I think the things that you gain from playing this version are ultimately outweighed by what you lose by not playing the more traditional Humans deck. And I could be totally wrong. You can feel free to argue with me in the comments. I could be totally overlooking something because, like, God knows it could be like, hey, Kano, you're a complete moron. If you just took this line every game, or you mulligan to this, or you tried to play this other card, you'd have won every game. Feel free to tell me that, because frequently when I play decks that are kind of off my base, there are obvious interactions I will overlook, especially if I have not played against those kinds of decks frequently. I struggle a lot with a deck like this because it's like, I don't know when to mulligan. I know when to mulligan when I don't have lands, and I know when to mulligan when I have like 1 land and all 2 drops and no Aether Vial, but it's much harder for me to evaluate what's a powerful hand in this deck. Anyway, I've rambled long enough. Francis Boyes, I hope that this wasn't too late for you. I hope that this video was satisfactory. This was an interesting deck, and thank you for showing it to me. I'm glad to see... Like, it's fun playing Champion of Parish and Esper Sentinel. I like having the individual tax effects of Sentinel, Thalia, Unsettled Mariner, and then being able to support those with Phantasmal Image. It's a fun deck to play. So thank you for sending it in. Thank you for being a patron. I really appreciate it. And you'll get another deck suggestion for this month because this was supposed to be your one for October, and I'm so sorry I dropped the ball on that. But anyway, you're all wonderful human beings. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye! Hey, just wanted to give a shout out to my patrons for the month of November. Thank you all so much, and if you guys want to see your name on this list, please check the link in the description below. Thank you.